Alright, well, I've been working on the platform. I've got everything cut to final width and dimensions. I went ahead and put some biscuits in all the corners to help me with alignment when I get to gluing this up. I think I'm going to go ahead and cut the door opening in the one where it goes so I don't have to try to mess with that with it all glued together. Alright, well, I went ahead and knocked that hole out where that cover is going to be right there. The way I did that was I needed to do a plunge cut. So instead of trying to go in freehand, I just stacked up two boards here and screwed them down onto my straight edge guide. And then I could put the saw on there, and with the shoe up high, I could do my plunge and then back into my corner and then go across and meet the other one. And then come in with a razor saw and just take out what's left. I've just got a little bit of cleanup in these corners and everything's looking good. That actually worked out really well. This is the actual face that I made for that. I needed to trim a little bit off the length to make it fit the hole, but my cutout, aside from where I ran my razor saw, just a slight skim on these to knock these parts off. This is a usable piece. I mean, it's exactly 16th inches, a 16th inch on all sides, which is what I was going to end up with, or want to end up with anyway. I went ahead and did a dry fit on this corner here. I made some of these clamps, corner clamps here. That's going to work out quite nice. Just kind of shim things up to get them level and then check my corner. Because this is such a big glue up, spatially is what I mean, I'm going to do one corner like this, make sure it's square and let it sit. And then I'll do the other side that comes around and let it sit. And then I will glue the two halves together. That way I'm only messing with 2 fresh joints instead of 4 if I tried to do a complete glue up. Things like this are kind of hard to do by yourself because they want to move around, and if you don't have a lot of hands helping you, the glue can set off before you're ready for it. So I'll get these glued up, put together, and then we'll move on. Alright guys, well, we finally got something assembled. It's starting to look like something now. I basically did what I said. I glued up one side and the other side, and then we married the two together. If you don't have a flat work surface or something like that, I'm going to throw in a little tip here. Obviously, when I made my corners, I did the diagonal measurements to make sure that it was square and made small adjustments there. But if you have it racked this way, you don't really have to go around here with a level and try to get everything level. You just take a piece of string like here, drawn from corner to corner, and get it tight, and do the same thing from that corner to that corner. And if there's a gap, you need to rack it in some way with shims or whatever. But you put the string on the other side, you check it on both sides, and you close that up. So that's a good way to make sure everything is on the same plane instead of having to mess around with other stuff like that. So we're moving on. We're going to continue on this until we get this finished, and then we're going to start building the columns and work our way up from there. Alright guys, well, I made some progress. I got all the rest of my pieces made here. I got these 2 strips that are going to support the joists on, glued and screwed. I am going to be able to use these even though they're twisted. I did replace that original material with some 3/4 plywood scrap I had laying around that's going to go in there in between the joists. So I'll start stacking these in and get 2 of these installed, and then I'll be able to remove the twist and knock this down in the hole. I've also got the rest of my trim work that's going to go on the inside around that hole. Past getting this installed, I believe I need to make the platform that'll sit on here, get it cut to dimensions, and we're closing in on this part being completed. Alright, well, I've got all the joists and the backers in. It's starting to shape up now. It actually was quite easy working with that twisted wood. I put that one on the far end, and then 2 of these backer pieces, and then just simply used a clamp to draw it up, and then set the next one and just worked my way down. Worked out great. No problems there. Alright, well, I've made and installed 4 corner braces. There's one there. You can see that hole just above it. There's one below it as well. There are 8 holes in this carcass. Those are where the columns will bolt on from the inside. Quick shot of how the opening is framed in. Pretty straightforward. Alright, well, I've installed 4 magnets in these strips right here, as well as in the cover here. This is going to just simply be held on just like that. I will need to, after it's painted, I'm going to put some 16th inch spacers in there to elevate it to where it's centered. Side to side, that'll just be done by hand. And whenever it's ready to open up, which won't be that often, I didn't want any access holes or anything here. I'm just simply going to take like a coat hanger or something and go in with a hook and just pull it out. So that's that. I just now need to make the platform deck for it, screw it on, and this part will be finished. Well, alright guys, I've got this deck cut out and screwed on. It's not glued, and it won't be glued. Reason being, when I go to put this together, I'm going to have to get to the inside to bolt on the columns. I really should have filmed this clip. I decided to bring the 4x8 sheet in here to this small space and scribe it from underneath rather than trying to measure and lay everything out. I should have filmed that, added some Benny Hill music, and thrown it in here because that was something worth seeing. Me trying to get this through the small door, into here, up on this with no space. I mean to tell you, it was a cluster. But we got this taken care of, and now it's time to move on. Alright guys, well, I'm starting to work on my column pieces. I had to drag my drill press out of the corner so I could work with these longer pieces of material. You can just kind of see my basic setup here. This little guy is just so I can slide down to the next one. Some of them have 3, others just have 1. But I'm just setting my depth to where these are just below the surface. Standard stuff. Once I get all these punched out, I'll come back through and core out the center and then press them in. Well guys, this thing is getting really big now. It's hard for me to kind of get full shots on it. I'm wedged back in a corner. I went ahead and, after installing all those T-nuts, put these on just to ensure that everything was going to line up properly before I finished building the columns. If there was going to be a problem, I'd want to catch it now, but bolts went right in just like they're supposed to. Alright guys, well, I'm cutting out all my biscuit slots to help me align these columns. I've already got this one finished and mocked up. Everything fits nice, looks good. I've never cut biscuits in here. I don't do wood cutting in this space, but I had an old pool hose that one of the ends was messed up on, so I heated up some PVC and made an adapter here as well as one for my shop vac. It's actually keeping it 100% dust free. Really surprised me. My shop vac is in the corner, so rather than go all the way over there, I've got an extension cord with an inline switch so I can just turn it on from here when I'm ready to use it. I'm going to show my glue up procedure on this. I've got some plugs that are going to go in various spots inside these columns I have still yet to make. I'll show those when I get there. Alright, this is just an example of how I'm going to go about gluing these things up. This is a lot of surface area to try to cover in one shot. So I've just got these down in here, and both of these cradles I've got set up here. Dry fit with biscuits. This gives me horizontal surfaces to deal with so the glue's not running all over the place. So I'll address these, get them all glued up, drop in all the biscuits, and this one will simply just get flipped over and installed right here. I'll use blue tape to secure these joints and get them tight, and then it'll get set aside to dry. Then after I make my plugs, it'll come apart the other way. I'll do the same procedure where they'd be set back in like this. Glue everything. There you go, little blue tape, done deal. Just a little example on how I'm going to go about this with all that surface area to glue. Alright guys, well I'm zeroing in on this column business. I've made my plugs that go in there. These holes are for clearance for the bolts. I've got bolts up in there and I'm using those bolt holes for alignment and just gluing the 1/2 on it like that. And then this one goes in the center. There's a bolt that comes in 90 apart. And then the top plug is just simply 2 pieces together with a T-nut encapsulated in there. Once I get all these glued up on all of them, then the halves will go together, and aside from sanding and finishing work, the columns will be complete. Alright guys, well I'm finished with the columns as far as I'm going to take them for now. Just kind of softened up the edges, cut them to length, everything's looking good. I've got more work to do on these later as my build progresses, because there are going to be a series of grooves here and there that hold the wall panels. Alright guys, well we're moving on. I'm starting to work on this upper deck that's going to be here. This is the banding. I've cut everything to width, not length yet, but cut a dado in here with my dado stack. I'm not real fond of some of these knots, but there's nothing I can do about that. So I've done my best to try to position them to where any force is going to be at the bottom to help support things, but I'm building this like a tank, so that really should be a non-issue. Alright, well on these corner pieces I've got all my holes drilled where they mount to the columns, as well as everything's got some biscuit slots. I'm just starting to glue these up here so I can move on to the bigger pieces. It just makes for easier management of these small ones like this. Once I get it all glued together, I'll mock it up, and then I need to make the joists that go across there. I've not even started those yet. Alright guys, well I got this thing glued together. I mentioned that knot. That wasn't even supposed to be part of this assembly here. That was for another part of the bed, so I messed it up by putting that rabbet in there. It turned out that everything is clear except right here where I'm standing. I put the one with the knots here because she'd be less likely to be over here. I went ahead and made my joists here. I've just got them temporarily in there. They will be glued and screwed from the end, each end over the counter bore, and then I'll plug the holes with a dowel, trim them flush. I'm going to stop on this bit for a little while because I want to gain some work because it's getting cold. So I'm going to shift my attention to the top and start making all my pieces for that, and then I can bring them in here and do the final fit up for that stuff. After this is all set up and I get a better day where it's not rainy, I need to make the platform decking for it, but I have to cut that outside. So what I'm going to do is I'll take this out and I'll flip it over on the sheet of plywood, and I'll just scribe around here, cut it to my lines, and it should drop right in. Well, alright guys, I've got everything for this top roof band cut, dry fit, ready to go. I'm just going to show a couple of corners. The other two just simply run right around, but this is the actual front that has to come off in order for me to get the ladder access door down. So this particular hole is where it bolts down to the center of the column where I put that T-nut. And you can see I've got a T-nut here coming up from the bottom of this piece. This corner here, the reason it's cut like that was for me to be able to support this and hit the center of that column. You can see how this one is shaped. This biscuit here will be glued in place, and you can see how I brought this slot out. This is to help hold this miter closed, and I'm hoping it works out. If not, I'll have to put a little L bracket in here, but I think this will work. So this in essence will come down from the top, slide into place like that. This corner will all be closed up just like that. Okay, I've got another piece here that just simply has a hole in this side, right here, and then on the other side there's this recessed area. That is to go over the head of this bolt. It's kind of confusing, but this actually sits on this piece here and will be glued to this. So once this drops in, it'll get bolted on just like that. I'll show the other side since it's a little bit different, and then I'm going to move on. Alright, well this is the other corner. You can see it's slightly different. This rolls around the corner and hits the column here. That's because this overhangs the column. It cantilevers out. So this is what's going to get fastened there. I've got the same type of T-nut here and the same slot here. This one is just simply going to be put together like this. You can see the holes that I'd already mentioned. So this will get glued onto here. It also has the exiting slot for the biscuit. This biscuit will get glued here, and then this slides in there. I can't put it together because I've got the tripod in the way. So I just wanted to show a little detail there because I'm not really going to be able to do some of these shots as I start working above my head. Alright guys, well, I'm going to go handheld here for a minute. It's going to be easier for me to move around. I'll do the best I can with the camera. I've got all this put together, fastened on. I've got my peaks cut, clamped up there. I can't fasten these yet because I can't get that one off. I'm close to the light and about a ½ inch from the ceiling where it tapers down. I've got just things everywhere. It just barely went in here. This part turned out pretty good. This corner looks nice. Everything's looking good. I do have a problem that I'm going to show here in a moment. This corner is where I did the biscuits. It's almost closed up. I'm kind of hanging over things. I don't know. There's a little bit of daylight. It may not show up on the camera. But that did okay. I may try to swell that biscuit a little bit, the half that I did not glue, with maybe 50-50 sizing of glue and water to swell it up and take it down and see if that works. If not, I'll put a corner block in there with a couple screws. But over here, I ran into a problem. I'm trying to get through here without falling, and I have to do a back bend over this table to try to show you what I'm talking about, so bear with me. You can see how this one is not closed up at the top. I hope that picks up. Let's pan a little bit here. When I glued these things up, they were square. Checked it with a square. This side down here is definitely square, but somewhere around in here it kind of starts rolling off the rails, and I'm a good 1/16 inch off that square. Now when I glued these up, like I said, they were cut square. It was checked. It was glued. I glued them on my workbench. These joists were not in here at that point in time, and I moved them over and I let them hang in here. I may have bumped a clamp or something when I was doing that. There's really nothing I can do about it now, but on this one, or at least maybe both of them, might as well just do them both. I'm going to make some blocks to put behind this, and I'll screw them in to draw this corner up. It will close, but I'm going to have a mechanical means to do that. So it was good in concept, and it should have worked out using the biscuits the way I did. But sometimes things don't go as planned, and that one surely didn't in my case. I also got the joists installed here, plugged the holes, got them taken down to the surface. I think now I'm at the point where I need to make the deck for this. It's cold outside. I really don't want to. Maybe I can come up with something else to do, but that's where I'm at nonetheless. Alright guys, well I've got this decking material cut out. It is going to be glued all the way around the perimeter as well as down the joist, and I'll have some countersunk screws throughout it. Those screw holes will be filled in with an MH Ready patch because we're using this vinyl plank flooring that we're going to put down on here, and I don't want any of that to telegraph up through the floor. Alright, well I decided to go ahead and cut all this stuff for the railing here. I've got all the pieces to dimension and ready to roll. That way I can jump back between this and that and kind of keep things moving on. Basically the way this is going to go together, it's laid out like that. It'll have a single screw in every one of these spindles coming up from the bottom and then down right here from this point, and then this cap will be glued on the top. Alright guys, well I lowered the deck down and supported it with some clamps around the columns so I'd have a more manageable working height. Got the vinyl floor put on, turned out quite nice. Alright guys, well the railing has been assembled and mocked up, everything fits nice. To secure the bottom where it runs across, I'm just going to use a few screws and that will anchor that in, and where right up here where the top railing meets the column, on both ends I will have dowels in there to secure those as well. Alright guys, well as soon as I got this flooring put on and got it reinstalled, I showed it to my daughter. Now you can see the Legos in the background. She was ready to play. So I've been loading her up onto this since there's no way to get up there. Picking her up, putting her down tons of times, and I've just been working around her. I made a midstream design change. In my original design, this base molding here, this base shoe, as well as these two pieces here, were going to be separate pieces, and I never really got my head around how I was going to attach them, and the wall panel was going to sit down in between. So what I've done was just cut a strip in here, glued it together, and I'll have a series of holes that run down the length, and this one will get screwed down to the floor, and then this one will be screwed up to the ceiling, and that will give me what I need to secure those as well as still put the panels in. Other thing I've done was laminate two pieces of 3/4 together to make up my door jamb. There's going to be a little bit more work on this. I'll show that once I get there. Alright, well I've got all the rest of my wall panels and such made. These two pieces over here, the big ones, those are the headboard and the sideboard. This will end up being the arch that goes over the door. The back wall panel, no window in it. The big wall back there with the big window, and then this is the one that'll have the small window in the front. Alright, well I've got the groove put in these pieces. These two here for the headboard and the sideboard, the cap that goes on the top. Just a simple groove runs through that. This one here was one I miscut earlier, and I put a rabbit in it. And I don't have any more material, so I just filled this in. I'll trim it flush. That'll never be known. It's going to be on the bottom anyway. But that's the only way I could get around having to buy new, because I really don't want to.